We're talking to Greg Cochran from Aurora Energy, listing on the ASX in May. Greg, how long have you been a CEO?
My first role as CEO was about 16 years ago. I was MD of Uranium One Australia.
And for Aurora?
Only the last 3 or 4 months. I got involved when the company started focusing on relisting and needed to find a CEO with uranium experience.
What did you do before this?
My background is a mining engineer, but I did an MBA in the UK in the mid-90s and transitioned into senior corporate development roles. Companies like BHP Billiton and, interesting enough, Mitsubishi Corporation.
Where is Aurora's project located?
Yeah, so we're in the southeast of Oregon, beautiful part of the world, but not many people around, which is probably good from a mining perspective. But of course, you need people to work at your mine, and there are people certainly that would like to work in that environment, because a lot of their children are working further afield in places like Nevada.
In 10 seconds, can you describe Aurora Energy, please?
It's a fantastic company with a wonderful project that has both uranium and lithium, so two of the most critical minerals we need today to solve climate change.
What makes Aurora Energy stand out from its competitors?
I think it's those two minerals, first of all, and the fact that the uranium deposit is well defined, and we've got all this blue sky potential around the lithium as well. So really exciting.
What is something most people don't know about uranium?
Here's the thing. Most of the people talk about nuclear waste as a bad thing. It's actually a renewable resource. So we've got all this used fuel, as is the correct technical term, waiting to be reprocessed into more nuclear fuel.
Is uranium hard to find around the world?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because once you find it in one place, it's quite often that you find that you're in a region of a number of uranium deposits, like Kazakhstan, like WA, like Saskatchewan. It's about as common as tin, if tin is common, but there again, it's kind of more likely 500 times more abundant, I think, than gold, to put it into perspective.
What's done to uranium before it goes into a reactor?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps in the process. From the mining, which in itself, unlike most other types of mine, have 3 different types of mining processes, being in situ uranium recovery versus open pit versus underground. From there, you go into your normal chemical processing at the mine site. But after that, of course, there's a whole host, about 5 different steps as you upgrade from somewhat benign yellow cake, the generic product, to producing a nuclear fuel pellet that you put into the nuclear power station.
All right, looking at lithium now, what's something people don't know about lithium?
Would that be nothing to do with the Nirvana song, Lithium? I guess the cool fact about lithium is that it was created at the kind of birth of the solar system 13 billion years ago. So one of the first, I think the first of the 3 elements that were created in the original Big Bang. So it's been around for a long time.
What's the process needed to get lithium into a battery?
Somewhat simplistically put, I'd say that it's kind of similar to uranium in terms of all those steps. So the uranium, the mining side, generally fairly simple, although of course also 3 different types in terms of you can mine hard rock, you can mine soft rock like us, which we'd be aiming to do with the clays, or evaporites, where you evaporate a lot of water, brine, to produce lithium. But then there's this whole host of chemical processing steps until you get to the point where you're producing lithium carbonate and then the cell that goes into the battery.
Would you drive an EV?
Oh, absolutely. The way the design and the incorporation of electric propulsion allows design engineers to change the whole way they approach the design and the balance of a car. They're spectacular to drive.
Talking about big battery energy storage, do you think it's a passing phase or a crucial must-have of the energy transition?
Given where we're going with renewables, it is a must-have, both for transportation, but also for storage. I mean, if you look at the Sun Cables project now, we're talking about 17 to 20 gigawatts of renewable energy that they need. Because of the nature of renewable energy, they need double that in terms of storage capacity. Plus, we're moving to a world where each suburb will have its own kind of battery supporting 10 or 20 or whatever houses. So fundamentally important for the future.
Swapping across to the future outlook of things, where do you see the US nuclear sector going in the 2020s?
Fortunately, I think sanity is starting to prevail. So in the last 18 months or so, we've seen a situation where it's the stark realization that renewables can only get us so far, despite all the major subsidies that it's enjoyed. So for the last 18 months, there's been this recognition, this transition, and trying to keep the nuclear power stations going. So they need to extend the lives, plus commit to new build.
Are there countries you think will grow their number of reactors in the coming years?
Hugely so, and hugely is not a technical term, of course, but you look at China and their build out, you look at the Middle East commitment, but also once again, you look at how the West is coming to the stark reality that this is the base load power that we need to drive industry if we're going to go for clean energy, and that is a no-brainer.
Ducking back to lithium for one moment, Elon Musk is talking about mining lithium. Do you think he's got a shot?
It's Elon Musk we're talking about. Of course he has a shot. I'd say, I think he can achieve anything he puts his mind to it, given the evidence and the history of the last 20 years. How he goes about that is a more challenging question, because there's evidence in their last quarterly call that it's almost as if there's not the understanding required in terms of where they actually get their lithium from and how that part, our part of the industry works.
Is lithium here to stay for good?
Yeah, I'm a believer and have been for over 20 years in hydrogen. In fact, I did due diligence in a hydrogen fuel cell company in 1999 in the UK. So, I know a bit about hydrogen. And longer term, I think there is great potential for hydrogen, but lithium is definitely at least a transition element, but if not that, it's going to be around for a very long time.
What about uranium?
Even more so. If you think about really green, cost-effective production of hydrogen, you can probably get it from nuclear power stations, ideally, or hydro. Not that is where the world is going today, but if you erect a bunch of small modular reactors, which is the way the world is going, ideal to produce hydrogen. So not only that, but if you look at the UK, you look at France, you look at Japan, you look at South Korea, you look at China, India, the Middle East, and now the US, they're all reaching this epiphany that this is what we need. And with the benefit of hindsight, and admitted it's hindsight, but if you look at the German experience over the last 25 years versus the French experience from the 70s to the 90s, also 2 decades, have a look at how effective and how French electricity generation is so much more cost effective and clean than Germany and most of Europe, in fact.
Where do you see Aurora Energy in 1 year?
We've got a lot on our plate, and luckily we've got supportive shareholders, and we've managed to raise the funds that we need to for the next 2 years. To first of all, we'll be probably closing in on the completion of a uranium pre-feasibility study, given that it's a well-defined resource already. We would be progressing down the permitting path of that same project. On the lithium side, we're aiming to have our maiden resource defined in lithium. That's assuming exploration success, of course. And we'd be well down the path of our initial scoping level studies and metallurgical test work.
Where do you see Aurora Energy in 5 years' time?
Yeah, a lot depends on, and I think they will be sustained. The prevailing winds are, pushing us forward at a great rate of knots, and that's really encouraging. And so if that continues, we see the potential to be able to tap the markets when we require to raise the additional capital to accelerate our project programs, to the extent that in 5 years' time, we would be in development phase, possibly for both operations, or just once again, assuming exploration success on the lithium side. Remember that, and I think uranium would probably lead because it's shallow and easiest to access and mine, but also let's not forget that currently there's no domestic production of uranium in the US. And so that's what we can feed into, whilst the lithium needs to follow, because there's some sensitivities around how we lay out, or how we will have to lay out the mine in order to get the best of both inputs there.
All right. Greg Cochran, Chief Executive at Aurora Energy. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed the opportunity.